Hey there everyone, Mr. DeCourval back here yet again, and today I am going to be making a little something called pumpkin squares. Because of course our skill for this week specifically is baking. We're going to be baking something that I really enjoy and something that's a little more seasonal. And it's a pretty basic recipe. We just got to be a little bit patient and we're going to rock it out. So as you can tell with our recipe, the very first thing I'm going to do is crack my eggs, and I need 4 eggs. So it's a pretty substantial amount of eggs. So as I grab my eggs, I'm going to take it, I'm going to kind of touch it, crack it halfway between the egg, and I'm going to pull those shells apart. I'm going to do the same again. Now if you want to get a little bit saucier and you want to do a one-handed egg crack, what you do here is you kind of hold the egg a little bit almost like a baseball, or like as like a falcon talons, like exactly. So just like that, and you want to crack it right in between where your thumb and your 2 fingers are. So you want to kind of put it right in there, and then you kind of insert your thumb into that space of that crack that you made. And normally this goes a lot smoother when it's faster, and you actually got to lift up that shell with your thumb, and this is normally done horizontal, and your egg obviously just comes out. I'm going to come over here again, grab my egg, kind of crack it in that space, lift up with my finger. So I just washed my hands after putting our eggs in the bowl, and now we are going to go ahead and measure out our sugar. So we need 1 2/3 cups of sugar. So I'm going to get my 1 cup out right like so. I'm going to go ahead and scoop up our sugar from our container. Now remember, when we level it off, we are not going to necessarily, we got some hardened sugar in here, there we go. We're not going to scrape across like this, we're going to scrape across like this, because otherwise it would not be precise measurement. So I have my 1 cup, and in order to get 2/3 cups, I'm just going to use a 1/3 cup twice. So I added my sugar. Now I'm going to add 1 cup of specifically canola oil. If you use vegetable oil, it would still be okay, but canola oil is the preferred ingredient here. So of course we get down to eye level just so that we can make sure we have the exact measurement of our liquid. Now remember, contrary to cooking, with baking, you want to make sure that your ingredients are incredibly precise, because of course there are a ton of chemical reactions going on with our ingredients, and we want to make sure that they're all being done right. So we add our canola oil. All right, crew, so now we're going to go ahead and add our pumpkin. This is a 15-ounce can of pureed pumpkin, and we are going to utilize our trusty can opener to take off the lid. So as we crank this, we want to make sure we're being very safe with our lid after we take it off. So I'm going to just kind of push down on one side, the lid pops up, and I'm just going to go ahead and grab it and dispose of it. So I'm going to use all of our can of pumpkin. So I'm going to grab my rubber scraper, and I'm going to just scrape all of it into my bowl. Now that we've added all of our ingredients into our wet bowl, now we're going to go ahead and use our electric mixer and mix. At some point in time, you may want to scrape around the sides to make sure that you're getting all of your ingredients encompassed into your mixture. And now let's go ahead and go back to mixing. When we're done mixing, it's gonna look kind of, I hope you can see this, pretty much just orange, moderately liquidy, but don't worry, we're gonna thicken that up in a second. So I'm gonna set this bowl to the side, and I'm gonna grab another bowl for my dry ingredients. And for my first one, we're gonna add some flour. All right, so for our dry bowl, I'm gonna add 2 cups of flour. Remember, going across this way, not this way, across our cup. It's 1 cup of flour and 2 cups of flour. I am now gonna add 2 teaspoons of one of my favorite spices, cinnamon. That's good. We can put it in here, and actually there's a lip on our cinnamon container that scrapes it off perfectly level. I know, who would have thunk it? It's amazing. 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. We also need 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now baking powder, this is what's called a leavening agent, because it helps things to rise. And this leavens twice because it actually has 2 leavening agents in it. It actually is comprised of, baking powder is comprised of baking soda and cream of tartar. There you go, learn something today. We're also adding 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of salt. After we've added all of our ingredients into our dry bowl, we're just gonna mix them together, just to stir them together, just to incorporate them into one another. Now that we have both our dry bowl and our wet bowl of ingredients mixed together, now we're gonna add a bit of our dry ingredients into our pumpkin mixture, and then we're gonna mix it together. No necessarily specific measurements. We're probably gonna put like a third of the mixture in there at a time, and then we're gonna mix it up, and then add another third, mix it up, another third, mix it up again. Add the first third, now mix. And mix. And mix. Again, we're gonna need our rubber scraper to scrape around the outside. Around the outside, around the outside. So scrape around the outside, making sure again, so we get all of our ingredients incorporated, and again, we mix. So this is what our mixture looks like when it's done. I don't want to tilt it too much because I don't want to dump it out. And it's a good looking texture. And now we're going to prepare our pan for baking. So as it says in your instructions, we're going to use our jelly roll pan. Remember, a jelly roll pan is almost like a baking sheet, but it's got a little bit of depth to it, right? You can see it's about 1 inch deep right there. Now, in order to help my cleanup, I'm going to use some parchment paper. So these are little parchment pop-ups that you can buy that are almost like the exact size of a baking tray. But of course, this one doesn't necessarily fit super well. I want it to fit perfectly in the bottom. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my baking tray and put it on, or my jelly roll pan, I should say, and put it on the top of our parchment, and I'm going to trace around the outside. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut it out. Okay, so I've traced it. As you can see, it's not perfect, and that's absolutely okay. So now I'm going to take my scissors and cut it just inside of our line so it fits perfectly into the bottom of our jelly roll pan. All right, so I've cut out my parchment paper, and now I have it in the bottom of my trays. You can tell it doesn't fit absolutely perfectly, but as long as it's close, it will just help to hinder it from sticking to the bottom of our pan. Now I'm going to grab my pumpkin mixture, and now I'm going to add it to my pan, trying to make it as uniform as possible across the bottom. All right, everyone, so as you can see, I emptied all of my pumpkin into my jelly roll pan, and now I'm going to just, again, use my rubber scraper and move it across the bottom, trying to make it as uniformly level as possible. Okay, crew, so I've leveled out my pumpkin mixture into my jelly roll pan. I've already preheated my oven to 350 degrees, and we're gonna go ahead and bake this for about 25 to 30 minutes, always checking to make sure that it's done, utilizing a toothpick, sticking it in the middle, and seeing if it comes out clean. If you do that, then you know it's done. All right, crew, I'm back. So while our pumpkin squares are baking, what I'm gonna do, I'm going to make our icing, and it's a cream cheese icing. Now the thing is, we're gonna make this icing, but we can't really use it right away because we have to make sure our pumpkin squares have completely cooled down from baking in order to add our icing on top, because otherwise, if we don't let it cool down, it will just melt on top and just make a ginormous mess. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start off by adding 6 ounces of cream cheese. After the cream cheese, I'm going to add 2 cups of powdered sugar. And powdered sugar is the base of most icings and frostings, just as an FYI. 1 cup and 2 cups. We are also going to add a 1/4 cup of butter. Now, in each stick of butter is a 1/2 cup. There are 8 tablespoons in a stick of butter. There are 16 tablespoons in 1 cup. So 8 tablespoons is a 1/2 cup, 1 stick, and a 1/4 cup is then going to be a 1/2 stick, and it is already softened. I will now add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 1 to 2 tablespoons of milk. Now I'm just going to start off with 1 tablespoon of milk, because remember, we can always add more if it's a little bit too thick, but we can't take it out. And now we mix. You want to start on a little bit of a lower speed, because they'll be you want to make sure you kind of mash up your thicker ingredients, aka your butter and your cream cheese first. So again, we use our rubber scraper to scrape around the outside, and we continue mixing. Now if you find this is a little bit too thin, you can add a little bit more powdered sugar. If you find that it's too thick, of course, just add a little more milk. All right, everyone, so this is what our icing looks like, and pretty soon, as soon as our pumpkin squares come out of the oven and they cool down, we're gonna put it right on top. Hey everyone, back again. So my pumpkin squares have now come out of the oven and have had time to cool down. Now I'm just going to take my icing, which we've already kind of talked about before. I'm going to just drop it onto my squares, and then I will spread it around. I will now grab my trusty palette knife and spread around our icing, trying to make sure we have a very consistent layer so that it's all the same thickness of icing everywhere around our squares. All right, everyone, so I've officially finished icing my pumpkin squares, and actually you'd cut them into bar shape. You can have them be perfectly squares, rectangles. You can have them be whatever you want. Why not? You're not driving. But let me just go ahead and take this out and give it a little taster. Well, that's tasty.